Hello. In this video, I will review with you macro variables and then introduce you to a SAS macro program. I'll begin with a review of macro variables, and a macro variable is a variable that we will use for the purpose of substituting text. And there are two types in SAS. We've got the built-in macro variables, such as ampersand sysdate. We use that from the very beginning of the course. And there are user-defined macro variables. In this first program, I'm working with the sashelp.cars dataset, and I want to create two reports for a particular make of cars. First, we want to count the number of cars of a particular make and drivetrain. Make, drivetrain. And our table will show these counts by the number of cylinders. So we will be able to see how many cars in the data set are front-wheel drive Fords with 4 cylinders, 6 cylinders, etc. Second, we want a listing of those cars. We know they're all of the same make. They're all going to be Fords. We want to see the particular models, number of cylinders, as well as MPG City and MPG Highway. And I want this program to be repeatable so that I can generate these same two reports, but for a different make of car. To make it repeatable, we define a macro variable using a %let statement. We use the keyword %let, followed by whatever name we want to give the macro variable, then an equal sign, then the value we want it to take. And in this case, I'm choosing to call the macro variable make, and I'm giving it the value of Ford. And then in the program, we reference this by an ampersand symbol in front of the name of our variable. So instead of putting where make equals Ford, I'm putting ampersand make, because make is the name of my macro variable, and the ampersand tells SAS I'm referencing a macro variable. And in this program, I reference it 3 times. I've got it in line 7, line 11, and line 15. When I run this program, SAS will know to substitute Ford wherever it sees ampersand make. I'll go ahead and run it now, and we can see the results. Here we have our two reports. We see that there are 6 Fords with 4 cylinders, 4 with 6 cylinders, and 2 with 8 cylinders. We also see which particular models of Fords we have in the data. Now let's run this program again, but for a different make of car, Chevrolet. To do this, I'll only change the %let statement. So where I have Ford, I'm going to type Chevrolet. Now, if I was not using a macro variable, I would have to change 3 places in my code. But because I'm using the macro variable, I'm only changing 1 line of code. I'll run this again. And we see the results. We have 6 Chevrolets with 4 cylinders, 11 with 6 cylinders, and 1 with 8 cylinders. And below we see the particular models. Now let's get fancy. We're going to move on to a macro program, and that's a piece of code that we can use over and over again without having to write more than once. And below you see I've taken this code from above and just made a little bit of change to it. First, notice how we enclose our code between 2 particular keywords. I've got %macro and %mend. And the mend you can think of as being macro end. We also have in the parentheses our parameters. Now parameters are the same thing as our macro variables. We just don't use a %let statement here. And I've got 2 variables here, whereas above I only had 1. So above, wherever I had the word front, I'm now changing that to be ampersand drive so that I can run this for rear wheel drives or all wheel drives. It gives me more flexibility. But for now, I'm leaving these definitions blank. I'll define them later, so I don't know which particular make or drive I'm going to use to begin with. I'm going to run lines 22 through 35. And nothing much happens. We see the log, and that confirms to us that SAS processed our code. The magic happens when we call our macro program. And that's what I do below 3 times, once in line 37, and then 38 and 39. To call a macro variable, we will put a % symbol in front of the name of our macro program. Now the name of our macro program is car counts. So I've got % car counts. And then the parentheses, we will give the values for our parameters. So up above in line 22, I left those empty, but in line 37, I'm saying I want the make to be forward and the drive to be front. So this will be the same 2 reports that I initially created at the beginning of this video. But notice that I can run it for all-wheel drive Toyotas or rear-wheel drive Chevrolets. I've got a lot of flexibility here now. And I'm only going to run just these 3 lines of code. I do not have to run this program 3 times. SAS will take these substitutions and it will, behind the scenes, produce these reports. I'm going to run all 3 of these at once, and we'll see what we get. And I'll scroll through. We see the front wheel Fords, and I'll scroll down. Here we have the all-wheel Toyotas, and now we have the rear-wheel Chevrolets. We have all the reports we need, and it didn't take rerunning our code, and it didn't take making a lot of substitutions. If I was not using macro programming, I'd be doing a lot of replacement on my own. Notice that we have 3 references to the make variable. We have 3 references to the drive variable. So we have a total of 6 places where we will be substituting text times the 3 reports we made. That'd be 18 different substitutions. So we can see that SAS macro programming allows for a lot of convenience and efficiency and power. So have fun with macro programming. This concludes this video.